Gather around, Skull brothers and sisters. This is Minnesota Sports Talk, presenting Under the Lights with your hosts, Justin and Dave, next in 3, 2, 1.
Good evening, Vikings fans. This is Under the Lights, presented by me, Justin, with Purple and Gold for Days, and Dave with Minnesota Sports Talk. We have a very special guest this evening, a man who needs no introduction. He is one of the Vikings' all-time legends, and not only on the field, but one of the great ambassadors. And for the last 20-some-odd years, he has been one of the sideline reporters for the Minnesota Vikings on the Minnesota Vikings Radio Network. Number 8, Greg Coleman. How are you this evening, sir?
I'm doing well, Justin. How are you? Before we get started, man, I got a bone to pick. I mean, I love the intro. You know, I love all of the picks of the great superstars, but not once did I see a punter or kicker in that intro. So I don't know what you're going to have to do, to fix that, before you guys fire it up next time. But if you want me back on this sucker, you better have a punter or kicker. Something on special teams. My God.
Do not blame Justin on that. I did have a previous co-host who created that for me, and Justin took over his job. And I will now go back and fix it. I'll do a complete new one for you. So you got my word on that, sir.
No, you can keep the guys that you have, but
I mean, I'll get some. Well, I'll add something in there.
There you go.
I want to make sure. I want to try to get more Vikings on there because this originally was a show where I did more. It was on Monday night, and I did more of the entire NFL, but now it's just Vikings. So,
all right. Well, I like to put you on your heels right away. So,
yeah, you did. Gosh, I got a little defensive there. Hey, we wanted a second to brag about you, pull up a little bit about your resume. We have a lot of young listeners too here. Me and Justin did get to see you play, and it was a pleasure. Greg is a member of Florida A&M University Football Hall of Fame, Raines High School Sports Hall of Fame in Jacksonville, Florida, and member of the State of Florida Track and Field Hall of Fame, and was named to the all-time Black college football team. He was named to the Minnesota Vikings NFL Man of the Year in 1985 and was also selected by fans to be the member of the Minnesota Vikings 25th and 40th anniversary team. So quite an accomplishment there. Is there something that stands out to you in your career that you look to? And I notice you're repping Florida A&M all the time.
Absolutely. There was a time when there were other major schools did not want to have a face of a black punter or kicker back in the day. Florida A&M came to my house and told my mom, we don't have any money to give your son for a car. We don't have a scholarship for his girlfriend. We can't put an additional room on the back of your house. And I'm not saying that that's what some of those other schools did to recruit other players, but that's what they told me. And said, basically, we're just getting our alumni base to accept the fact that we'll have black quarterback. I don't think we can have we're not ready for a black punter or black kicker just yet. Florida A&M comes to my house, tells my mom if Greg comes to Florida A&M, he can run until his heart content. I was a hurdler, and awesome. He can punt and kick, and if he goes to class, he'll graduate. My mom says, where do I sign? And that was a wonderful experience at Florida A&M with some great mentors, teachers, tutors, and lifelong friends. And now to come full circle and be able to attend a couple of college football games. They went 9-2 this year. I think they were screwed out of the playoffs. Can I say that on this air? Yeah.
I don't think we're not regulated.
Well, I'm going to keep it PG in case my kids are listening. But
I definitely said worse, so we'll try to keep it clean too.
Yeah, I think they were screwed out of the playoffs. You go 9-2, you win 8 in a row, and you don't make the FCS playoffs. Something is wrong with that system. So I'm a little perturbed right now. But I'm proud of the body of work that those young men did down at Florida A&M. this season, and hopefully some will be a part of the Legacy Bowl the week after Super Bowl down in New Orleans. And that's a all-star game for HBCU players to get exposed and looked at under the close eye of all of the NFL teams. Last year we had 21 teams. This year I think we'll have all 32 teams because and the reason why this is so important, I think it was about 3 years ago where there was not one kid from an HBCU school that was drafted in the National Football League. And we had a lot of conversation with Roger Goodell and others, and he promised that that would not happen again. To their credit, they tried to say, well, it was COVID, pre-COVID and all that stuff. I said, well, hell, they went to all the other schools. They had COVID, they had protocols. And Troy Vincent, to his credit, vice president of International Football League in Roger Goodell's office, has been a significant part and great partner last year, and they're going to step in and do a great job again this year. You asked me what one of the things that I'm most proud of and most satisfied. Well, one of those accolades happened 2021, last year, when I was named to the Black College Football Hall of Fame. Because I have been to Canton when a number of our players had gone into the Hall of Fame. Chris Carter and Randy Moss and Mick Tingelhoff, Randall McDaniel, and a few others. I was there personally, and I saw what Dave Baker did when he knocked on the door to those men to let them know that they had made it into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Well, we didn't get a knock on the door, but when I got a call from Doug Williams and James Shack Harris, the two founders of the Black College Football Hall of Fame, I had that same range of emotion. And when I was presented my Hall of Fame ring down at Florida A&M in front of some of my peers with my family who could enjoy it and understand it, I think that had to be one of the highlights, because Florida A&M sits on the highest of 7 hills in Tallahassee, and to this day I owe them so much. Both on and off the field, not only preparing me, for the National Football League, but also preparing me as a man once that playing career was over. So I owe a lot of gratitude to that institution. Now that I'm no longer part of the Vikings broadcast, I can give back to Florida A&M. Had the opportunity to attend several games and spoke to the team a few times. And it's just, full circle. The good Lord gives you a journey, a part of a journey. And I didn't want all of my journey to be given to someone else. I wanted to write our memories as we chose to. And that was to support and help HBCUs in Florida A&M and even my high school back here in Jacksonville, Florida. So we're making our own memories, and that's not to discount the wonderful chapter of life that we had up with the Minnesota Vikings organization for 44 years.
That's awesome,
I'll say
man.
this. Hopefully in a couple of years when this college football playoff expands to 12, you won't have to, feel slated and jilted, because obviously if there were 12 teams this year, there's a very, very good chance that A&M would have been in there. But such is life. As as always, college football is always a little slow in progressing, because it took, who knows what it took to get a 14 playoff. So
yeah,
we'll be glad that once it gets to 12, so we don't have, teams and schools like yours kind of get left out for the same people and the same programs that are always there, the Georgias, the Ohio States, etc. So,
hey, before we move on to the next topic, I want to give a few shout outs. Greg, we like to have our participation from our listeners, and they show up all the time. All day, Ed. Nice to have you, man. I got Purple Pocket Podcast. That's my other host on my show tonight at 9:15. He's the one that's motivated both of us to do what we do.
Absolutely.
Skull Mafia, as usual. Thanks for showing up. My father-in-law, Javier Cubilla, is on right now from Panama, so that's awesome. And let's put David Michelson Skull Greg Coleman, 40 plus years with the Vikings organization, one of all-time Viking greats. Yes, we agree, and that's why we got him on. And a great ambassador for the game.
Absolutely.
But there was a big moment. There was a big moment that you are a part of, and it will be on record historically, showing Stefon Diggs where the end zone is. So was that what was happening? Don't step out of bounds. The end zone's over there. Nobody's going to tackle you. What were you doing? What were you thinking at that point in time?
Some people might think, man, you must be out of your mind. But here's what I was thinking. My former teammate and captain, Jim Marshall, they call him Norway Jim for the obvious reason. And when you were a kid, there's a game that you used to play, whether it was spin the bottle and, put your head on a bat and go around in a circle. Whenever you go around in a circle, put your hand on the ground, when you come up, you can be disoriented. And that came to mind. I did not want Diggsy, after putting his hand in the ground, spinning it around and going the wrong way. So I simply just pointed the young man in the right direction. And sometimes in life, all we need is a helping hand, somebody to show us the right way. And that's what I was doing that particular night.
That was awesome. What was the celebration like on the sidelines? I imagine you were a part of it.
Well, I tried to maintain some level of decorum, and my wife always tells me, hey, get your behind out of the way. You're not a player.
Yeah.
Get out of the way. But, I played as a passionate player. I lived my life with passion. When I was part of the broadcast, it was still that same passion that I carried as a player, as a non-player, as whomever I am. When I play golf passionately. So if you got me, you got all of that. And that celebration was one almost second to none. I've been part of some great celebrations, both personally and professionally. But that one was so incredible because of the mere fact that the opposing team had already packed their bags. They were doing the Skol chant, and they thought they were going to ride off into the sunset.
Yeah. Kamara was showing W's on the sidelines, eating them, and their coach is doing this. And yeah,
but see, let me tell you about a little bit about the character of that team. The night before in chapel, we were talking about one man can make a difference if you do your job. And Case Keenum goes in that huddle, and we're behind with 10 seconds left. Mm-hmm. And he, when they call a timeout, he looks at each and every one of them and say, hey, I'm going to give somebody an opportunity to do something great, but just do your job. And he called that play Buffalo Right 7 Heaven. And, the line blocked to perfection. The backs picks up the blitz. Rudy does his route. Thielen does a short cross. Mm-hmm. Dixie does a post corner. And to perfection, everybody does their job. Diggsy goes up, grabs it, spins around, the rest is history. But none of that would have happened if everybody had not done their job. And I think the mere fact that Case reminded everybody that great things can still happen, miracles still happen, but in order to get a miracle, you need a miracle situation. And that truly was a situation where a miracle was needed. And not only, talking about driving down for the field goal, you talk about a walk-off touchdown. That rarely happens in a playoff game of that magnitude. So not only the execution of the play, but talking about the importance of team and everybody doing their job in that huddle. I will never forget that.
And there was a throw before that to Thielen, which
Absolutely.
was utterly amazing too, which is
Absolutely.
crazy. And unfortunately for myself, my TV shut off while I was in the huddle. Apparently, I had one of those timers on, and it shut off in the huddle. And when I pulled it up, it was a little box in the corner, and I couldn't figure it out. But I could see all this cheering. I was like, God, there's a lot of Saints fans there cheering the victory. And I'm like, hold it, those are Vikings in the end zone. I finally got it big enough, and then I got to start to see all the replays and Casey Keenum doing this and the two, on the kneel down. That was just an amazing play. Do you remember the first person you like talked to after that happened? Was there a initial person that said something, or you said something to them?
No, everything, believe it or not, got quiet for me.
Oh, wow.
Because I knew that I had to refocus. I had to shift from being participating as a spectator and a fan.
I have a job to do.
I got a job to do. And when I grabbed Diggsy, I just paused for a minute. And I just looked at him because he was crying like a baby.
Oh, yeah.
I said, do you realize what just happened?
Mm-hmm.
And, after that, I don't remember anything else that I asked because guys were banging him, and it was complete bedlam, and it felt so good to be a part of that because you knew that it was history. It was an historic moment in the history of the organization, and you were a small part, a very, very small part, to have witnessed it and also to have been a part. And I say that my little part of pointing Diggsy in the right direction was the biggest part of the game.
Well, I remember watching one of the replays, and one of the things that I always get nervous about is that your teammates in a play like that have to remember, don't run onto the field. And I remember Brian Robeson just with this utter face of amazement. And if I recall correctly, I think that was his last full season because I don't think he made it out of training camp the next year. But I mean, we all had jubilation at that moment, but the look on his face, because I believe he was one of, if not the most seasoned veteran and the longest Viking at the time. And from where that picture shows you and from where he was running, I'm like, did he cross in front of you? Do you remember,
there were so many guys that crossed in front of me. One of the receivers who was not dressed up that night, was it Caleb Jones or some, hell, they damn near beat Diggsy to the end zone.
Mm-hmm.
And I was praying that they did not step on the field.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Because that would have been so disappointing. But after Diggsy gets into the end zone, he snatches his helmet off, slings in. I'm saying, no, don't take your helmet
in the
off.
air.
Because he got fined.
He got flagged, actually.
He got flagged and he got fined by the NFL because you don't take your helmet off in the field of play. But, it was what it was.
There was probably some heart stopping because they did mention that there was a flag on the field. I'm like, oh my God, what's that going to be? But yeah, we saw, obviously he threw his helmet. Hey, but there was another. Now that particular game was ranked in 2019 by the NFL as the 9th greatest game in the history. I don't know why it's only 9th, but there was another game that you were involved with or a part of, and it was ranked 96, which I still don't believe either.
That's still way too low.
Way too low, is the Miracle at the Met. Ahmad Rashad spinning around too. Did you talk to him before the game to make sure he was going to run the right way if he got this pass?
No, not really. We had a pretty good veteran team back in the day. And, the execution, people look at this play, but it was actually the play prior to.
The hook and ladder,
The hook and lateral from Joe Sensor to Teddy Brown. That was, you talk about flawless execution. There was no panic on the side at the sideline after Cleveland scored. We just knew what we were going to do. And to Les Steckel's credit, who was an assistant wide receiver coach, we had been practicing that play for the right situation. And this one gave me more satisfaction because several years prior to, I'd been cut by the Cleveland Browns and Sam Rutigliano, who was the coach of the Cleveland at that time. And there were a number of those men who were part of that Cleveland Browns team were teammates of mine, 3 years prior to. And not only that, it was a game that we clinched a playoff berth. So, with all of that range of emotion, both teams being on the same sideline and Cleveland being the closest to the play, we couldn't get down fast enough.
Oh, that's right.
So we had to run all the way around their bench. Some of us ran through their benches because they were there in utter disbelief. And what a joyous moment. For me, a kid who was at the right place at the right time, and being a part of that celebration with those men. As a matter of fact, there's going to be a celebration in the Twin Cities, I think on the 16th, celebrating that play. I'm not going to make that event, but a lot of men who were part of that team and some Vikings who were not a part of that particular game and in that team are coming to celebrate. I think Tommy Kramer deserves a lot of credit for the magnificent body of work that he executed during the course of that game. And everybody on that team, to a man, offense, defense, and special teams. And Bud would always say, it takes all three phases. And the look of jubilation, and I can still see Bud and Matt Blair arm in arm running off the field with that jubilant smile. It was just priceless. It was priceless.
Speaking of Tommy Kramer, who is the nickname 2-Minute Tommy, who kind of almost perfected the 2-minute drill, that day he went 38 for 49, 456 yards, 4 TDs for a 132.7 quarterback rating. And what an amazing day. And you won the division, right, with that game. You didn't just make the playoffs, you won the division with that game too. So that was crazy. And Ahmad Rashad, obviously made the play. Now, what I find crazy is that he started in 1972 and he really didn't break out as a receiver until his first 1,000-yard game was in 1979, but he made the Pro Bowl in 78. So he was 29, 30, 31, 32 were his 4 Pro Bowl years. What was going? I know he missed the 75 season, which was amazing offensively, amazing defensively. Chuck Foreman calls it the best Viking team ever. But in 1975, he had a knee injury. Was he hampered by injuries early in his career, and then he broke out after that, or what happened?
Well, I didn't get to Minnesota until 78, midway the 8th game in 78. But Ahmad was part of the St. Louis Cardinals back then, and then the Seattle Seahawks before he was traded to Minnesota for Bob Lurtsma and a draft choice or something like that. You imagine that, Bob Lurtsma being traded for somebody. Anyway, but no, I think when he came to Minnesota, I think he had established a great relationship with Bud Grant because Bud being a receiver himself, and receivers are divas. We all know that, and but they found a way to coexist, and thrive because. His years with Fran Tarkenton were outstanding. And then when Tommy came in with the strong arm and he was one of his favorite targets, I mean, he and Sammy White and Stu Voigt and Ricky Young out of the backfield and Chuck Foreman. I mean, you had one of the most dynamic offensive units in all of football. When I got here in 78, my first game was against the Packers, but my second game was the first Thursday night game against the Dallas Cowboys. And people give Bill Walsh, and rightfully so to a certain extent, all of the credit for establishing the West Coast offense. I beg to differ. It was the late, great Jerry Burns who unveiled a formation that we call Purple Gun. That was the first enumeration of the West Coast offense. We went empty backfield. Chuck was in the slot. Ricky Young was out. Stu Voigt fanned out. You had Ahmad and Sammy. Dallas didn't know what hit them. We tore their behinds up in Cowboy Stadium on a Thursday night. And I do remember that Tom Landry tried to intimidate me. He sent Cliff Harris and that other safety, Walt Garrison, I believe it was, Walt somebody. And I got hit about 3 or 4 times that night, but I averaged about 47 yards a clip and put about 4 inside of the 10-yard line. So that was another highlight against the infamous Dallas Cowboys. But, we've had so many great teams over the years and so many great players. And people always ask me, what was the greatest team that you played on? Man, you always remember the playoff years, but sometimes you remember the years that you struggled because you grew closer as men because of the disappointments on the field. We had to circle the wagons, and all we had were each other. But no, that was a great team when we won the playoffs against the Cleveland Browns with the Miracle at the Met.
Well, to your point, sometimes you learn more in defeat than you do in victory, because sometimes it shows you where your weaknesses are. We've let you. I got to throw some names up here. Skull Zone, thanks for joining us. One of our guys who's going to be on with you tomorrow, GG Sports. What's up?
Yeah, that's awesome.
He says hello to you. There was a couple others in there.
That's probably Jamie.
Yeah, probably. Having said that, what would you say the best team you played on was? Because I actually had an opportunity to meet Tommy with my girlfriend at an event, and Keith Millard was there, Henry Thomas was there, one of those signing bits.
The crew.
The hat that I'm wearing now, I was going to purchase another one for them to sign because this is my hat. Well, Henry Thomas just comes up to me, just whips it off my head. He calls Keith and Tom over and is like, "Hey, come on, get this guy." I was okay, sure, whatever the case may be. Which was the best team that you played on as a Viking? And we'll talk to you more about your opinions on others briefly, but what would you say your favorite team, not necessarily the best one, but your favorite team?
Man, they all are favorites, but I would have to put a little asterisk by that 87 team. We did some remarkable things that year. And I do believe it was that the strike year? Was it the year before?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And we got the graphic up now, 1987.
And it was so difficult because being one of the leaders on that team, being one of the captains, being a player rep at that time was very, very difficult to keep all of our men from, number one, crossing the picket line, because the fruits of our labor, the guys today are benefiting from.
Most of
hugely.
Bud would tell us, he said, Touch, I don't care what you do. You keep them together. Whether you guys come across or whether you stay out, whatever you do it together as a team. And we had to fight because we found out that there were some no strike clauses in a few of the players on that team that Mike Lynn had put in, looking down the road. He knew that there was a possibility of a strike,
right?
And some of our key players. So we had to go in and negotiate that. And I learned a lot, not only as a player, but as a leader, on what happens outside of Sunday afternoon, the things that take place in the boardrooms, the conference calls, all of those things, the meetings with Gene Upshaw, who was the president of the Players Association at that time, and all of the inner workings and the give and take in that contract. And then once that strike was finally over, we had to regain some footing because they told us these games are not going to count. So they just filled a team full of guys off the street. They lost more than they won. So we had to work our butts off and scratch and claw to make it to the playoffs. And then once we got in, we were hitting on all cylinders. And first of all, going to New Orleans and upsetting the Saints, and then going to San Francisco in beating those guys, and the NFC Championship game coming up a play or two short from beating that team up in Washington to make it to the Super Bowl. That was a very good team with Darren Nelson and Steve Jordan, Joey Bronner. The list goes on and on and on.
Anthony Carter. AC
was amazing. The AC was a one-man wrecking crew against the 49ers. Randall McDaniel and Terry Tausch and Brett Boyd, that offensive line that we had, and Joe Sensor, Steve Jordan at tight end. I mean, it was just an incredible, good group of guys. And on defense, you had Chris Dolman and Hank Thomas and Carl Lee, Joey Bronner. The list goes on and on. It was a fun team to be around because we genuinely cared for each other. We loved each other. And it showed on the field. People talk about chemistry. Chemistry is nothing more than a group of men who put their personal agendas aside and do what's in the best interest of the football team. That's what creates chemistry, man. We hung out together. We ate dinner together. We hung at each other's house. My house was one of the was one of the safe places. We had a big house. We entertained most of the guys. We had a pool, a big backyard, a lot of barbecues and dinners and all of those things. So it showed that we were a close team. Some of those relationships are still intact today.
I'll say this, as a boy in Minnesota, all of 8 years old, that was just months after the Twins.
Yeah, that was a great year.
And prior to that, I didn't quite get it, what it meant to go to the playoffs and advance, and you're just a couple away from a championship. I remember after the Twins beat the Cardinals, I went to school the next day saying, okay, who do the Twins play next? And no, they just won the championship. They're done. So seeing you guys being talked about as the team that just snuck in, because all the hype was going to San Francisco and New Orleans. They had the two best records. There were only two wild cards at the time, so it was just looked at as New Orleans is the one good wild card, and Minnesota was just along for the ride. And I'll never forget, even as 8 years old, I remember John Madden and Pat Summerall in utter disbelief that the Saints managed to have 12 guys on the field as the half expires, giving Wade Wilson one more free play. Summerall says, you put this in the category of freebies because absolutely nothing can go wrong for the Vikings here. And he could not believe when Hassan came down with that pass. He's like, I don't believe this. How did this happen? And John Madden's like, the Saints, they had it. They were out of this. The half was over. And from that point on, you knew that was the dagger in that game. So
absolutely.
And then next week, AC you said one-man wrecking crew earlier. I mean, he was the one-man wrecking crew level one against the Saints with the punt return that kind of set the whole thing in motion. But 212 some odd yards on, a dozen catches in 1987. In
10 catches for 227 yards, and there was one that he almost caught too. He could have had 300 in that game. He was so dominant.
But see, here is where I want to go back and really give Jerry Burns his due, because that was a head-to-head matchup with Bill Walsh, presumably the father of the West Coast offense. But again, another night, I told you that first night in Dallas, that Thursday night, when we ripped the Cowboys apart, when we unveiled our first, formation of the West Coast offense. And then when Burnsy got a chance to go head-to-head with Bill Walsh, we ripped them apart. So it was satisfying on a lot of ends, man. But to see what that group of men did that year was amazing.
Not very many teams put Joe Montana on the bench. That's for sure.
If I could put some historical context in this, I know there's a lot to unpack there, but the Vikings started out 2-0 according to the schedule. I believe there was no game played that next week, and they viewed. And I remember them playing the Super Bowl over again, and then we went 0-3 with they called this quote unquote scabs.
Yep.
That's where that word came from. And then we came out and beat John Elway the first game. We go on up and down. We lost to the Packers twice that year, and they were a losing record. So it was a little bit of ups and downs. But when you got to the end of the season, it was 9-6, and we didn't just beat the New Orleans Saints. They were 12-3. We beat them 44-10. We go play San Francisco. There was a pick six on both sides of the ball. Which was amazing. I think a rookie, Reggie Rutland, stepped in front of a ball, but 10 catches for 227 yards by Anthony Carter. AC played with Chris Carter, so it was AC and CC eventually, which was pretty awesome. But then we play San Francisco. We knocked Joe Montana out of the game. They benched Joe Montana in that game. And and then we go on to Washington.
Wait, don't go anywhere yet.
Okay.
The other matchup that you missed was Anthony Carter against Jerry Rice. Jerry Rice was the perennial wide receiver in the National Football League, and Anthony Carter made people say, "Jerry who?"
Mm-hmm.
You know what? And I got the clips in the description below. If you guys want to check these out, I got stories on Greg Coleman. If I don't already, I'm going to go put it in the description below, and you can go check out that game, like 17 minutes of like all the big plays. I do have a question and then let me finish up by saying the team of destiny that year was with Doug Williams. You guys held him to 119 yards. But he wins the Super Bowl. I think he throws 4 touchdowns, wins the MVP, and he's the first black quarterback to ever win the MVP. Almost like the team of destiny. They were 11 and 4. I don't know, going into the playoffs, but they ended up winning that. And you actually went on to play the next year with Washington, right? What was that experience going to a team that just won the Super Bowl?
It was incredible because Washington was bigger than the White House. That football team, there were so many, gifted players. Joe Gibbs, the ultimate professional in coaching, and they were riding high. Mark Rippon was, trying to unseat Doug Williams. Doug had a rash of injuries that year. I was not in the, greatest of health, so we would be in the hot tub or a cold tub after every practice, and we would, trade stories and all of those things. And that was a period of time where Doug and I actually got very, very close. And because we shared very similar struggles. He is a black quarterback, me as a black kicker and punter. So we had a lot in common. But that was an amazing group of men. And I can remember going in, and Joe Gibbs asked me a question about former Gopher place kicker who was the second-round pick of that year for Washington was Chip Lohmiller. And Chip was struggling. He said, "Greg, what is wrong with Chip?" I said, "Coach, let me tell you something. Nothing is wrong with Chip Lohmiller." I said, "The problem that you have is you don't have a holder for him." Because I've been holding the last 6 or 7 years for a number of kickers and Jan Stenerud and Chuck Nelson and whomever else came through. And I pulled him to the side, and Craig McEwen was an H-back. Then he had Mark Rippon trying to hold. And I said, "Coach, each and every time they put the ball down, they're missing the spot." I said, "First of all, McEwen, he can catch a football from a pass." I said, "But his hands are too hard." I said, "Number 2, Rip doesn't want to hold because he's trying to unseat Doug, and he's thinking about the third down that he screwed up." And he looked at me and he said, "Hey, I don't know how long you're going to be here, but would you mind holding for Chip Lohmiller?" And I said, "Absolutely." When I started holding for Chip in the 8th game of the season, Chip Lohmiller never missed another kick the entire year. So that shows you how important special teams is, because Bud Grant would always say special teams has got to win me 3 games a year. And it held true. But it was a great experience in Washington. They had some iconic men on that team, Darryl Green and the interesting Dexter Manley and Art Monk and Gary Clark and
who's a running back?
Yeah, the Timmy Smith and the Hogs, and it was just a great experience. But I will take my days in Minnesota over that 1 year that I had with Washington, without question.
This has been awesome. I'm pretty speechless. Did I have another slide after this?
Yes, you did.
So, you said Doug Williams, and I everything fed into this because you brought up Doug Williams calling you to congratulate you to the Hall of Fame, or I think he's the Black College Hall of Fame, correct?
Black College Football Hall of Fame, yes.
Football Hall of Fame. And what would you go back and tell this black and white photo of yourself of, what's going to happen to you? Is there some advice you would have gave that guy back then?
The only thing that I probably would have shared was treasure every moment. Because all you have is that breath that you just took, and all you have is that play that you just participated in. Because nothing else in life is guaranteed. because as a player, you're only one play away from being a former player or a retired player or worse. Because this game that people see on Sunday is just that. But the business of the National Football League is vicious. It is a revolving cycle. It will chew you up and spit you out if you're not able to manage and maintain the responsibilities. It's an area of responsibility and accountability. You're not in college anymore. You're not in high school anymore. You are a professional. And I'll never forget, Bud Grant told me one day, he said, Greg, I can get anybody to put on a uniform and put on a helmet with purple horns on it. He said, but we are called here. We are paid to win. And if we don't win, changes are going to be made. And I knew that because I got cut the year that I was drafted in 1976 by the Cincinnati Bengals. But I, again, give credit to Florida A&M University because I graduated. When I got cut from Cincinnati, I went back and I taught high school history. But knowing that I had not received a fair shot, because the mistake that I made was I was coming out of track season. I ran a 4.34, 4.4 in the 40, outrunning everybody for the most part, with the exception of maybe Archie Griffin and Isaac Curtis at that time. So Paul Brown and the staff said, hell, you got too much speed to be a punter and a kicker. So they tried me at wide receiver when that didn't work out. Then they tried me at defensive back, but I still had to go after practice to compete. And it wasn't fair. It was not fair. I really didn't get a chance to place kick because I thought that I was out kicking their second round draft choice at that time was Chris Barr out of Penn State. But again, I didn't get a fair shot. Went back, taught high school history. My former athletic director and the infamous Jake Gaither of Florida A&M. And if you don't know anything about Jake Gaither, you Google Jake Gaither, one of the winningest coaches in all of college football. And Jake had a relationship with a special teams coach in Cleveland. And he made that call. And he said, the coach name was Al Tabor. He said, Tabor, I got a kid down here who needs a shot. That's all he needs. And I got a call from the Cleveland Browns that following year and went up and I kicked the hell out of the ball. They drafted a punter by the name of Tom Skladaney in the second round out of Ohio State. Skladaney did not want to punt in Cleveland. He wanted to punt in a dome stadium or somewhere out California or Arizona. Arizona didn't even have a team at that time. And I continued to kick the heck out of the ball. And it was a nasty, publicized holdout with Skladaney and all of those things. And I can remember Forrest Gregg coming to me and he said, Coleman, I got a question for you. He said, can you handle this? I said, yes, sir, I can. All I need is an opportunity. He said, well, you're going to be my punter. To hell with Tom Skladaney. And Forrest Gregg, full-blown Native American Cherokee Indian, gave me, young African-American kid, an opportunity to punt in the National Football League. And I've been so grateful with gratitude for that opportunity that Forrest gave me. He was let go at the end of the season. Sam Rutigliano comes in. They draft another punter in the second round out of North Carolina State, kid by the name of Johnny Evans, who was a quarterback / punter. I was kicking the heck out of the ball. I had a 48.9 yard average that preseason. Thought I had made the team. The Friday before the first game, I get a call. Greg, Sam wants you to come to the office and bring your playbook. I said, well, hell, I'm a punter. I don't have a playbook. I went to Sam's office because I told him at the beginning of training camp, I said, Sam, why don't you let me go? Because you drafted a kid in the second round. And Sam says, no, the best guy's going to get the job. I said, Sam, come on, man. I know how the game is played. Let me go. No, the best man is going to get the job. Long story short, I get cut, try for 4 or 5 other different teams. Nobody wants to make a decision. We're still living in Cleveland. Now, I'll be quick with this. Living on my 9th floor apartment window. Town Center Apartments, a big high-rise in downtown Cleveland. Park Center Apartments. And we're watching a game between the Los Angeles Rams and the Minnesota Vikings. And it was that game, if you go back, you're talking about Tommy Kramer. It was a game back in 78 where Jack Youngblood took Kramer, dumped him on his head. You can find the video somewhere. And Kramer was out cringing in the field, concussed, and all of those things. And I go to my ninth floor apartment window and I open my window and I'm screaming at God. I said, you lied to me. You said that if I would pray and if I would do the things that I was supposed to do, you would give me the desires of my heart. I said, you lied to me. I said, because all I want to do, I've been doing the things that you asked me to do, and I just want to play football. And I'll play football so bad that I'll even play for the Minnesota Vikings. And I got the window. And the next day, I got a call from the Minnesota Vikings.
That's so awesome.
I'm here.
Tell us that I heard this story you tell, and I want our listeners to hear it too. And you brought it up a little bit earlier. Your first game was against the Packers, and Bud Grant, I believe, told you something and surprised you a little bit.
Well, he hadn't said anything, the whole game, and I was having a pretty good game, and he said, "Well, do whatever, but don't get it blocked." Yeah, damn. I mean, why do you tell a punter that? So his last punt, I think we were up by 2 late in the fourth quarter. We were in our territory. I think it was like 4th and 11. And you got to keep in mind, we got Chuck Foreman, Ricky Young, Ahmad Rashad, and Sammy White, and Fran Tarkenton, that quarterback. And but I'm going to do what the coach tells me to do. So I catch the ball and I look up and I see Fred McNeil let his man slide in. So I'm thinking that he's going to block it. So I take off and I run around the sideline, the right side, looking, 4th and 11, humping my butt off. And I see that first down mark and I dive for it. We had mud and dirt and grass and stuff all back then, and all of it's inside of my helmet. They stretched the first down chain out and I came up about this much short. And man, I'm thinking, damn, man, you just got here. They're going to send you off on the next plane smoking. But as I'm coming off the field, I get greeted by Carl Eller, and then Jim Marshall, and Bobby Bryant, and the list goes on and on and on. Say, man, we got you. We ain't never had nobody around here with the gonads to run a ball like that. We got you. And they stopped the Green Bay Packers. We won the game, but I'm on the sideline, and Bud eases over. He said, well, what happened? I said, well, you said don't get it blocked, so I thought they were going to block it. So I took off. And he kind of
got in your head, man. You got in your head.
He said, hey, the next time you run around here, you damn sure better make it, okay?
There you go.
There is an example of that we have for you. Do you think you could pull it up, Justin?
When Coleman joined the Vikings as a sideline reporter 21 years ago, he made it his mission to flip the Dallas
Cowboys.
Just
why don't you start it over from the beginning so you can see the whole thing? So here we go.
Being one of those pioneers, those trailblazers, to give other young African American kids.
Billy Joe Dupree had me right
hope
dead
that they
to
can
right.
do the same thing.
Billy Joe needed to work
Coleman joined the Vikings as a sideline reporter 21 years ago. He made it his mission to flip the field,
and turn on that
just as he did
4-4
as a
speed,
punter.
picked up the first down.
At 4-4 speed right there.
Hit me.
I was going to ask you, that must have been where your track Hall of Fame credentials came from, because look at that. That was amazing. How is that possible?
Well, you watched Fran for a while, so
Yeah, you just say, hey, Fran Tarkenton do it. I can do it.
Listen, fear is a great motivator, okay?
Adrenaline's a heck of a drug, right?
That's right. So
my God.
Who says that punters are not athletes?
Yes.
Dude, Pat McAfee, man, he's he's got nominated for the Hall of Fame, and he's got his own podcast. He's big time now, and he was he was an athlete on punter. He laid hits, he fake punts, he ran for like 60 yards in a play. It's crazy. There's athletic punters, and I actually I went to college with Adam Vinatieri. That guy's probably going to be in the Hall of Fame. He was a good high school football player. He played linebacker in high school.
And I tell you, you talk about athletes. There's another kid who was a great athlete who still should be punting in the National Football League, and that's Marquette King, a young kid that came out of an HBCU school, Fort Valley State, all-pro punter for Oakland and then Denver. And then some shady talk came out against him, but there's been shady talk against a lot of players. But this kid can punt. He's still punted in the XFL. He's going to try it one more time. As a stepping stone to get back in the league. He can still thump the rock. And you talk about an athlete. He's a great athlete and one hell of a kid too.
And we got one last slide for you, because you're pretty. And I'm hoping that guy gets a chance, man. I think everybody does. We've had a couple of players on our team that had some things said about them that turned out to be not true, and they're still on the team. And management stuck with them. So it's, it's sometimes, a second chance is warranted. I think great Bobby Bowden, he says, I'm the king of giving second chances. So,
well, and, I'm gonna tweak that just a little bit. I don't think we need a second chance. I think we need another chance, because most of us somewhere in life, we've already blown our second chance, and there's a book that I read that God says that he's the God of another chance. And, awesome. And all we need to do is get another chance and make the best of it. And a lot of men have, and some have not, unfortunately. But there's some deserving people. There's some great people in this world that deserve another chance. I'll just leave it at that.
That's awesome. I think I'm on I think I'm a cat. I think I'm on like life number 7 right now. So I could use another one too. Hey, what do you know? Maybe this is my next chance. And there is a picture here, and you're rocking Florida A&M as usual. And you had already answered my question about that, since you're wearing a shirt right now. But you kind of had a good relationship with Paul Allen, and you had the pregame preach. And I wanted to give you. Did I say it right?
Yes.
Pregame preach. Okay. Because I actually wasn't around in South Dakota where I grew up when you started doing this. So my brother says, Davey, you got to check this out. And he would send me a clip of you doing the pregame preach. And actually this season I was trying to do, I don't have the Bible memorized, and I'm not going to go out of my way to do stuff like that. But I tried to do something like you did, and did a hype video, like 15-minute hype video on Sunday. I wasn't any good at it. You're great at it. And kind of tell us how that came to fruition, that you started doing that pregame preach.
Well, it happened to be one night we were on the road, and I was actually speaking at chapel, at our team chapel, on Saturday night. And Paul kind of stuck his head in the door, and just for a minute, and just looked, and he went away, and because he was not a regular attender of chapel, Paul wasn't even coming to chapel. In that particular segment of the broadcast, right before kickoff, was called Coleman's Keys to the Game. And he came up and he said, well, we're going to go down to Greg Coleman for Coleman's Keys. You know what? I saw this cat preach last night. We're going down for the pregame preach. And that's how it started. Being a man of faith, and knowing that there's always a place for faith in whatever part of life that you may be in. So faith and football they're synonymous with each other. I can't separate the faith part of me with the football part of me, with the broadcast part of me. You get all or nothing. And it created its own vibe, being respectful of others. But I tried to tie in a scripture, something that we may have been talking about the night before, as a motivational piece for Purple Nation. Because obviously the players never heard it, because they're on the field getting ready to tee it up.
Right.
But some do get a chance to listen to it after the game or the next day or something like that. But there were a segment of Vikings fans who encouraged me, because that 30 seconds of encouraging word with faith and football, and some of the letters that I've gotten, some of the texts and some of the tweets that I have gotten, that have shifted the atmosphere with some people, that we're about to do something, that we're about to say something that was not good. I won't get as personal, but there were a number of instances where someone has told me that, Greg, I was about to do something very, very stupid.
Wow.
And just hearing that, because I'm a huge football fan, but it was something that you said about that particular scripture, about going through a storm, about, moving a mountain. It stopped me in my tracks. Those stories were over and over and over again. So though that was encouraging enough for me to be bold enough to continue that, because I don't think it's ever been done in the National Football League. And I have to give our management credit for allowing me to be who I am, to make that part of Purple Nation. And the pregame preach has its own cast of characters, its own following. And very, very soon, most of those pregame preaches will be in a devotional book coming out.
Awesome.
Soon. Yeah.
I'm buying it. I
I'll
was going to
say
ask you, where is these been archived? Like, I know they probably have them recorded somewhere, but just to have them archived somewhere, it would be awesome to figure how to be able to listen to those again. Because I only got to listen to a few of them. I was out of the state. I didn't even realize I could get radio on my phone. So I was like, my brother sent me this. I'm like, why can't I listen to this? Why, So yeah, I want somewhere to get them, but the fact that you're gonna have a book out, that's gonna sell out.
Yeah,
in Minnesota.
I'll say this: I don't remember it word for word, but it was a Sunday night or Monday night football game in 2008 against the New Orleans Saints. We had just brought Jared Allen in. I believe that was the first primetime game we had with Jared Allen in that season, and you had mentioned that the Vikings are going to need to do this to stop Drew Brees. And you mentioned, it, as near as I can remember now, and my memory can be a little off sometimes, but you had made mention of Antoine Winfield. And that was the night where he had the block field goal return for a touchdown, the sack fumble touchdown. And I'm like, this pregame preacher, does he have a hotline to the man upstairs? I mean, again, don't quote me on this, but I remember you saying something about Winfield that night, and at the end you said, if that happens, the Vikings will be dancing in the Big Easy or something to that effect. And
yeah.
I said, whoa.
Sometimes
it was amazing.
Sometimes you have a sense, you have a feel. It was nothing that Antoine had said to me. Nothing that, but sometimes the good Lord just gives you a little favor, and that's how it came out. I have prophesied before on some things that have come to pass, but it's not to toot my own horn; it's to give God glory, basically, for all of the things and all of the blessings that He's given to me during the Thanksgiving season. I try to remind people of what we all have to be thankful for, regardless to our lot in life. Things could always be better, but things could also be worse. During the holiday season, Hanukkah, Christmas, and so many, different celebrations for so many different cultures. Being respectful of all of that, but I can only be who I am,
right? And
try to share that raw emotion, that passion that I had as a player, passion that I have as a person, and passion that I have as a broadcaster.
Well, we do want to be respectful of your time. So Dave and I will stay on as long as you do, but we do want to talk about this year's team. Do you have a couple of moments for a couple of questions from the chat before we do that?
Absolutely.
All right. Grandizer said, Mr. Coleman, thanks for paving the way to the late, great Reggie Robbie. Did Reggie or any other punters ever seek advice from you, or what kind of advice did you give?
Reggie was a dear friend. I got in the league maybe 6 years prior to Reggie. Reggie would come up to Minneapolis and do my kicking camps that we used to have over at St. Thomas many, many years ago. Unfortunately, he passed about maybe it's been about 10 years now.
Oh, wow.
Reggie, one of the few African-American punters. You can name them on a couple of hands, the number of African-American punters and kickers that they've been. And as a result, talking about using a platform, with HBCUs. Last year, we gave away the first Greg Coleman Golden Touch Award to the most outstanding punter from an HBCU school, along with the award, giving them some financial assistance to go to kicking camps, to hone in on that craft, to get the exposure that they need to give them a leg up in life, to give them that extra step that they may not have had growing up as a young African-American punter or place kicker. So this will be our second year. That award will be given down at the HBCU Legacy Bowl in New Orleans the week after the Super Bowl. So that's something that we're proud of. I have made it a point not only to connect with and stay in touch with most African-American punters over the years, but punters are in kickers, period. They don't have to be African-American. We're a fraternity of different men because we're punters and kickers. And it's a small fraternity. That same fraternity of men, when Ray Guy went into the Pro Football Hall of Fame many, many years ago, there were about 19 of us. We got our number shirts made, number 8 on the shirt, which was fine with me because that was my number anyway. Right. And our Hall of Fame shirts, and we all go to Canton and honored Ray. You know, we call him the godfather of punting for this generation. You know that Horace Gillum was the first. I mean, phenomenal. I respect and honor the men that have punted the football before me, but being the first at that position, those other men played other positions. But being the first pure punter, you know, it's something that I hold dear. It's something that I'm honored. It's something that I'm humbled about. I didn't set out to be the first African-American punter. I just, like Doug Williams said, I just happened to be a quarterback who happened to be an African-American.
This will be the last personal one before we get to some more on the team, on the topic we're going to have here. But David had asked, and you had mentioned some of the players earlier. So, you know, you've had a lot of great teammates. Is there one that stands out, whether that be with the Vikings or with the Washington team?
Oh, man. No, even in Cleveland, I had a great mentor. He was a linebacker from the Cleveland Browns through the Oakland Raiders. His name was Gerald Irons, and he was one of my mentors. And he would say, Coleman, no, don't do that. Coleman, let's not go this way. And he would just watch me and he would encourage me. And he said, man, you're the best. He said, you're amazing. He said, and I don't ever want you to forget that. And he said that I encouraged him to write a poem. And Gerald Irons wrote this poem. It's called To Be the Best. To be the best is my quest. Now, athletes come and athletes go, but there's something very special about being a pro. On and on towards this goal I strive while keeping my championship hopes alive. To be the best is my quest. Now, some might just be happy to make the squad, but I'll never be satisfied until I get that Super Bowl wad. And so much happiness I know it will bring, the thrill of wearing a Super Bowl ring. To be the best is my quest. Now, everything needed I cannot mention, but I hope the things that I've said is not beyond your retention. He said, Greg Coleman, always be the best. He's one of my dearest friends. We lost Gerald about 2 years ago. Very dear man. Henry Lawrence, another, you know, he was one of my roommates down at Florida A&M, a first-round pick, offensive tackle for the Oakland Raiders back in 1974. We still remain close today. As a matter of fact, I talked with Henry today. Darren Nelson, we became very, very close. Tim Baylor. Tim only played a couple of years with the Minnesota Vikings, but our wives bonded together. We had kids together. And just over the Thanksgiving holiday, all of the kids and all of our grandkids came together and we took a pic. And this is what 45 years of relationship has produced. Our kids are now having kids. And so those are the memories. You know, you'll forget the scores, you'll forget the salaries and all of those things, but it's the significant moments and the significant memories that you have with those men and women that you've established relationships with over the years. Alan Rice, another one of my dear, dear friends. He's a minister down outside of Houston, Texas. You know, once you start calling names, you can't stop, because each and every year there was something significant about those men on that team, and they all played a part of your life. They helped you grow, and they kept you humble. They kept you balanced. They kept you laughing like crazy, because we had some crazy guys on the team, man. Yeah. So there you go. I know it's a long-winded answer, but
no, man, you've been great.
You take whatever you want.
I had a question I wanted to ask you. But I forgot to ask you, and it was about the 87 game against San Francisco. What were, even though you won that game, Who do you think on your team is more scared? The linebackers trying to tackle Roger Craig doing the high knees, or the wide receivers coming across the middle against Ronny Lott?
At that point, we had no fear.
Oh, okay.
We had no fear. I mean, we said that we were good enough to beat anybody. Bud Grant said that. Jerry Burns said that. Our leaders on the team said that. And we were stupid enough to believe the rhetoric that we were talking. There are other words that you can put in that place of rhetoric. We were talking a lot of smack back then, and we had to back it up.
And Jerry Burns had quite the vocabulary.
Oh, yes, he did. Yes.
Talking about Bob Schnelker? Really?
I still have Jerry Burns on that game where we won.
Yes,
we won the game.
That's right.
And how many F-bombs he dropped in that conversation, in that interview. It's a YouTube Hall of Fame right now.
He was just about to leave, and then Pat Royce had to throw one more question in there, and that fired him up again.
Yes, he did.
Schnelker is going to be my
yeah. I'll say this. One thing that Millard and Hank Thomas both said, that being on a line with Chris Dolman, Keith Millard, and Henry Thomas, and Al Noga, the season that they had, where I think all of them had double-digit sacks, and Chris and Keith were both hovering around 20. I mean, just think about that in today's NFL. One player with 20 sacks,
but think about what Henry Thomas had as a nose guard. He had double-digit sacks. That was unheard of back in the day.
Well, and then you also got Joey Browner. And the only other safety in the league you can talk about is Lott. And I'm like, why isn't Browner in the Hall of Fame? Why isn't Scott Studwell in the Hall of Fame? That guy is like a second all time in tackles. It's like they don't give him credit for tackles.
Well,
I mean, it was like 250 a year. It seemed like for 5 straight years. It was crazy.
Unfortunately, when you don't win the big games, you don't get the benefit of the doubt.
Joey Browner, man. He broke people's legs when he tackled him. It was like crazy how tough he was.
Yes, indeed.
I don't mean any disrespect to Harrison Smith, but when somebody tells me that Harrison Smith's the best Viking safety, I'm like, you did not see Joey Browner play. And again, that's not a knock on Harrison. Okay, just to be clear, because it's kind of like.
Well, there were different rules too.
Right.
But both those men have a great respect for each other.
Oh yeah.
They have met a number of times and have had conversation. And you can even go back to, you talk about Paul Krause, Joey Browner, and Harrison Smith, without question will go down as the 3 greatest safeties in Minnesota Vikings history.
We have a lot of good players that wore purple. It's amazing. If you go look at lists of teams with players in the Hall of Fame, and we're an expansion team.
Right.
We have just as many, if not more than most, and we still have more division wins than the Packers. So, I mean, people forget how good we've been and how consistent we've been throughout the years.
All right,
how many freaking Hall of Fame players we have.
Let's circle back here because I got to jump on another call here in a few minutes.
Okay.
But let's talk about this current team.
Yep.
I think they're a very special football team. I think the nucleus of this team was, for the most part, the same men who were part of this team last year. The difference, there was a shift in culture. There was a shift in the mindset. They flipped the field, so to speak. And what this coaching staff has done, what Kevin O'Connor has done, what Kwesi has done, what that coaching staff has done, has taken what was already there and molded it and shifted it just a little bit, a little tweak here, a little tweak there, and gave them the mindset to finish games. Regardless of what happens, you learn how to finish. And that's what this group of men has done. People are now calling them the cardiac kids because, man, you wait till the end of the game, it's going to become interesting again. But
one way or the other.
Last year when we were in those positions, we lost those games.
Mm-hmm.
6 and 8.
This year,
games.
Same close games, but now they're learning how to finish. They're learning how to finish. And this could be a very, 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 very special team. People ask me, do I miss the broadcast? Absolutely. You miss being a part of a 9-2 team, but I don't regret the decision that we made to step away to create and make our own memories. If they make it to the show, trust me, I'll be there cheering them on. I'm still supporting them. Those are my guys. Wishing them nothing but the best because they deserve it. And Purple Nation deserves a champion. They deserves a winner. And if they continue to do what they're doing, it's just a matter of time, baby.
I'll make this last one quick because I know we, have taken a lot of your time. But what do you think, of Kirk Cousins in general and the fact that he's wearing your number? That's our guy, Rap from Purple Pocket Podcast, who always stirs the pot about Kirk Cousins.
Not stirring a pot. I think Kirk is doing a great job, okay? If you're looking for – there are only one or two Patrick Mahomes. There's only one or two Bradys. You take the hand that was dealt to you. Kirk was dealt to us. Make the best of it. As far as wearing my number, when they traded for Kirk, I got to give Rick Spielman credit. Rick Spielman called me. Said, Greg, we're trading for Kirk Cousins, and we're going to let him wanted to know if it's okay for him to wear your number 8. I thought that was the highest form of respect.
Absolutely.
From any general manager, from any team. You say what you want about Rick Spielman. That move was classy, and it's one that I will never, ever, ever forget because he didn't have to do it. Players change numbers all the time. And then I went out and I met Kirk at the Vikings golf tournament. What a gentleman. And, hey, Greg, I really appreciate you allowing me wearing the number. But he didn't have to do that because Ryan Longwell had worn number 8 prior to that.
Right.
Todd Bowman had worn number 8. But
that's right.
To the mere fact that Rick would take the time, being a part of the organization for that long, I didn't have any qualms one way or the other, but it really, really resonated with me, and it's a gesture that I will never, ever forget.
That's amazing. I mean,
we probably had more plans to talk about this current team, but honestly, it's been more than what we ever expected to get so much from you today. It's been a freaking, I don't know, a plane ride through time for us, because honestly, those are probably the formative years of us as Viking fans. Correct. And to have you tell it to us, seeing it, and then also giving us a little insight like you just did. I mean, it's been an absolute pleasure. You got anything to end the show, Dave?
I'm going to say this, and this is not me just blowing smoke at you because you came on our show, but both being the trailblazer you were, the player that you were, and how wrapped with this organization that you have been. I said it at the beginning. I called you a Viking ambassador. With all due respect, your name belongs in that ring of honor, my friend, because everything that you have done both on and off the field, somebody said that to me once, a punter in the ring of honor. I said, he's not just a punter. He's an ambassador. And he's somebody that bleeds purple every bit as much as those of us that never play, that want to say, will the Vikings ever not let us down? I said, this man belongs in the ring of honor. Absolutely. Thank you so much. It's been an honor.
Thank you so much, man. I appreciate you guys, Dave. Hey, have a great holiday. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. Stay safe, and God bless you.
You as well.
And I'll change it. I'll get a new intro for you when you come back. Okay. And hey, if I possibly can get back in the playoffs, I'll give you a ring, but you don't have to. But just the fact that you offered to possibly come back was big enough for me. Hey, thanks everybody for listening. This is, God, I forgot what show I'm on. I got 3 of them. Under the Lights with Justin and Dave. And this is Greg Coleman, Viking great, and should be, as Justin says, in the Ring of Honor. Why the heck not? He's been a great ambassador and honestly one of the great Vikings of our time. So, hey, that's it for today, guys. Skol Vikes.